writing down this name. Good old fashioned. I will call to order meeting of the the Board of Selectmen at 6:30, May 21st. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, yes.
And just an update, the present to speak was supposed to be the deferred tax payment people, but they decided to come to the June 3rd.
Okay.
And I didn't update.
So the next item on our agenda is approval of minutes from our May 7th, 2018 meeting.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes of the May 7th meeting as written.
Second. Motion by John, seconded by Liza. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No abstentions? Motion passes. All right. Next item is present to speak. If you are all here just because you want to be, I am really excited. If you're here for the item under new business, the discussion of a potential nuisance ordinance request, then we can hold that discussion under that item, if everyone's okay with that, and we'll give everyone an opportunity to speak who wants to speak, okay? Anyone present to speak on any other topic? Yes, just state your name for the record.
Christine Salkas, Registrar of Voters.
Yes.
I don't know if you want me to say something now or correspondence. I believe that you received something.
We did, but you can mention it, you can talk about it now.
From our office concerning a little bit about what we've heard at the budget referendum from voters. I think, as you know, the turnout was extremely low. And I think because the moderator, the registrars and the poll workers tend to be the face that people see when they come in, we get the brunt of complaints from voters about not knowing what the vote is or what we're doing today. I don't think there's been a year that's gone by. I've been working the polls in one way or another probably close to 20 years, and it doesn't fail that somebody walks in the door and goes, they're very proud of the fact that they live in Willington for many, many years, but they come in and they go, I saw a sign. I have no idea, what are we voting on today? So I think this has been, as you know, a perennial problem. Susanna and I try to remedy it by getting signs, and in fact we're ordering a few more signs to get out and around town. But we do feel that this is a town function, and that the town really needs to figure out something about getting the word out to people. The registrar's function is to run the referendum.
I agree with you,
So-
Christine. The signs are great for that day, but I think we all know if someone just comes in that day to vote, they really don't necessarily know why they're voting, for what they're voting. So they are now gonna find out that it was a budget referendum, and they're gonna see the questions, but they don't have the information that leads them to maybe make an informed, or cast an informed vote. So we're back in the, how do we share the information that is shared in multiple ways, that has been for years, and actually I think it's better access now than it used to be with electronic options. So there's email, there's a website, there's social media, and it's finding the way to get information out there. Some people will say to me, it should be in the paper. My response is, there is information in the paper, but I think we'll find a smaller percentage of our residents regularly read the paper than they did in prior years. So I'm open to any and all suggestions on how our residents feel we can best share information with them regarding all meetings, especially the ones that lead up to those votes. Board of Finance meeting, Board of Education meetings, Board of Selectmen's meetings, any of those meetings that share the information on the budget, which is what we're ultimately voting on. So,
Well, I have to thank Claire, she did get 2 articles
Yes.
in this past time. But we also heard a lot of complaints from folks who say, you know, I'm on the e-blast, I got nothing. So, or I did, you know, I don't have Facebook. So, again, we're just putting it out there. And when we're in the poll room, we cannot explain to people what's going on. By law, that's not our function. We cannot then talk about the budget or what the vote is all about. So,
getting people signed up for our e-blast is important. We knew that there was an issue with turnover in those lists from the old website to the new. So Willington Day is this Saturday at River Road at the Willington Day committee booth, which is the concession stand you see down there. We'll have actual signups. You can leave your email and check off what you want to get. We'll bring them back here and we'll do all the work putting them in. So residents can sign up that way. So hopefully we'll get a lot more. But again, at some point, we put the information out there, but we can't make them read it. So how do we know that how do we know that residents are sharing that?
I think,
It's gonna take a
personally,
group
I think
discussion.
that we're, next referendum, I think we're gonna have the names and phone numbers and email addresses of the selectmen and say, please, contact these folks. Contact the Board of Finance. Contact these folks if you feel that you're not being, you know, that you're not getting the information. And, you know, hopefully folks have suggestions. I think we usually ask, Jean, don't we usually, you know, ask people, okay, well, what do you suggest?
works for you, right.
How can we help you?
Right, so any of that
So,
feedback. So
Any type of feedback is good.
maybe at some point a joint meeting of some of these boards, just to kind of hash out what people think. Your thoughts?
We could, my thoughts, I think Suzanne and Christine do a very good job setting up the election. I think the town does a very good job of getting the word out. The only problem is, first of all, people have to wanna hear it, and second of all, I think we're doing everything we can. Now, I know that there are other places, you know, the old Soviet Union, they used to pride themselves that they had 100% of their people get out and vote, because they were very progressive. And they did, they send the police out to round people up and bring them down to vote. I'm really not in favor of doing that here.
Don't believe that was on the table.
If people want to vote, if they really wanna keep in touch with what's going on in town, they have the ability to do that. And when election day comes, they gotta know it's election day because there's vote signs all over the place. I'm not saying this is a horrible problem.
I don't think for us, John, it's a horrible problem, but for the resident that comes to vote,
Yeah.
that didn't know it was a vote, it's a problem for them. So that's how it comes to us, because we are so involved in the process that we can't imagine that somebody didn't know that for months we've been working on a budget and it was leading up to a budget referendum that happens every year in May. Every year I hear the same thing. The years that I spent on the Board of Ed, I heard the same thing from people, and every year I was stunned that someone didn't know. Once again, in May, we were voting on a budget that people have spent months working on. So I'm kind of with you, John. We can put the information out there, but we can't make them read it, and we
No.
can't make them know about it. So, but thank you for bringing it.
But I do have to
Yeah,
say, I think the people who do care do know about it.
I do.
And the people who don't care don't know about it, and they're gonna come and complain if they didn't know about it.
And I think I last time took the stand where, you know, I like to think that they think we're doing a good job, so they're okay with it, whatever that is. So it's something that we'll take under advisement and take a look at and see what we can do to help. So is there anyone else present to speak?
Yes, your graph, I just wanted to comment on that.
I'm sorry, your name was?
Your graph, And so, I went to the town website to see what is actually posted, and basically it gives you yes or no. It says we're gonna spend this much on that, yes or no. But really, what I would like to know before I vote is more information. And so if that could be posted on the town's website as well, then I would walk in as more informed.
So what I would say to you is what you saw was a sample ballot, and
Right.
that's all that they can share with you, that's all the registrars can share as far
On the
as
town
how you should vote,
website.
on the town website. The information on how we got to that vote is in the minutes and the meetings that led up to that budget. Every Board of Finance meeting that happens between January, every week in February and into March. Every Board of Ed meeting leading up to there, they have multiple meetings that discusses their budget. We have meetings weekly, they're all posted online, and so that's where the work happens to get to those questions.
Right.
So there wouldn't necessarily be any one item from the town.
So you
that-
cannot put it all together as one thing that before we go to vote, that we can see that? Because I think then,
I think
It's
all we
easy.
could do is give you a compile list of the information, we could,
yeah,
it would be, I think it gets tricky into us leading you into
correct.
a way to vote, and that is what we have to be careful of. That you can take the information you've learned and make your own informed decision. So, but the information on how we got to that point and how the people in the town have felt about it are in those meeting minutes. How the residents who came and spoke out in favor one way or the other of a budget are in the bulk of those meetings. And I'm hoping that we can eventually get to have every meeting available to view, that it would have been recorded on video. Most of them have audio, and you can see copies of those. So there are multiple issues, and maybe it's a good topic of conversation at an informal meeting at some point. All right, anyone else present to speak? All right, so correspondence, there's a list of correspondence, it's available in the selectman's office, that was one of them. But that came to most of us, I don't think that's on the list. I think the one I'll mention is that we got something from Willie Waste.
Gonna ask what
Yeah,
that was.
so the letter from Willie Waste was discussing unacceptable items they found in our recycling as of late, so we shared that with the Public Works Director. So Derek has that information, to try and educate residents, again, on what can go in our single stream recycling and what can't. Because what will happen is if they continue to find things that don't belong there, there could be penalties on our end as far as pickup. So Derek has that, so that hopefully we can start to get some information out to the rest of the town. All right. My report. Tonight, the River Road Lights, tonight the Rec Commission is meeting, and they're meeting out there. So they're starting to work on where the lights are gonna go, and they're setting those things up, so that's moving forward. Nothing else in some of the others has changed. Since our last meeting, the Public Works Department, the crew has been busy sweeping, cleaning catch basin tops, sign installation, grading gravel roads. They dug holes for tree planting at Hall School, they're burning the brush pile at the transfer station, and they edged Tinkerville Road for paving. Tinkerville Road will be paved this Wednesday, May 23rd, weather permitting, so if you can avoid that area if possible. The paving, Derek anticipates being done in one day. All right, so on to new business. The discussion of a nuisance ordinance has come up, so residents who came in to meet with me, I think we heard from one of them last week, who had requested an ordinance. This was a topic not new to the Board of Selectmen, however new to Liza and myself. It was on some selectmen meetings last summer, and as far as I can see, there was no outcome, one way or another, whether we were moving forward or whether you guys had decided. There was nothing in writing in those meetings, whether that was the feeling or not, I'm not sure. So I decided to put it back on the agenda so we could hear from residents. So at this point, I'm guessing that most of you are here to talk about that topic. So everyone will get the opportunity to talk. We'll just ask that you limit yourself to 3 minutes or less, and then we'll be able to have discussion. I'll start with saying that I got an email from a resident who lives on Cosgrove Road. And this came this afternoon to me, and this resident has lived there for 9 years. And they have ridden with friends and neighbors on ATVs. And the general, I think you both have a copy of that email. So, let's see. This is along with our neighbors on both sides, have ridden our ATVs the entire time. Mr. Bissonnette stated that a track was installed between two houses. I wouldn't consider a handmade loop by the owners installing a track. Or I suppose we would have installed one in the woods. I can understand if people were riding up and down the road or if people were riding at all hours of the night, but that's simply not the case. As far as 4 to 5 hours of straight riding a few weeks ago, that was also not the case. They rode for maybe half an hour and then went into the woods. This resident felt that if we were going to propose an ordinance and ask neighbors' opinions, that we should ask all the neighbors, not just the ones who share that opinion. The board, just to be clear, the Board of Selectmen did not request an opinion from any one neighbor. If we simply put it on the agenda, and information is shared, and ultimately, if an ordinance is put in place, it's gonna affect not just the residents of Cosgrove Road, where the issue seems to be right now, it would affect every resident in Wellington. So we have to keep that in mind. So, this resident also goes on to say that, part of the reason many people choose to live in Wellington is to have enough property to do things like ride. While I may not enjoy listening to my neighbors leaf blowing first thing in the morning or people chainsawing wood all day, I don't feel I have the right to tell them what they can or cannot do on their own property. As far as noise affecting a nervous system, I think that's a bit extreme, but that is my opinion. I have a 5 and 8-year-old, and if you ask their favorite thing to do at home, it would be to ride the ATV and dirt bike, and I do not feel I'm harming them by letting them do so. I feel this is more a personal issue than a town concern, and would find it incredibly disappointing to see this town take away people's right to enjoy their property. So that's merely one opinion. I'm sure all of you have a say. So at this point, I'll entertain anyone who would like to speak on the topic.
I'll be more than willing to speak.
Sure. Just all we ask is that you state your name and address.
My name is Stephen Johnson. I live on 42 Crossgrove Road, right across from Mr. Bissonnette. And I operate my ATV probably a half hour at a time. At most, maybe I've rode an hour. I'll do all my riding in the back of the woods as of late. I put a front yard on my house. My house is very presentable. You can feel free to drive by, take a look. There is a track maybe up in the woods of riding an ATV around a simple loop with a fellow neighbors and residents. I have had 3 friends over my house to ride ATVs. 2 of them are residents and are sitting right here, and including my neighbor who is also a resident. And it's pretty much just recreational fun. It has never exceeded 2 times a week at most, maybe 6 times a month. And that's about it, and I don't want to see Wellington take that away from me. Motorsports is my passion. It's fun. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Guess it's logical for me to go. I'm 50 Cosgrove Road, I own the property, so I guess
Just
most of
state
you
your
won't
name.
hear from me. So
just
first
need your
off,
name for the record.
Brendan LaPlante.
Thanks.
First off, I'd like to at least get the facts out there because I read a paper and it was more or less, in my opinion, absolute lies. Decibel levels that were manifested and made up from an alleged window from something that's, you know, several hundred yards away in the back properties of my woods also. There's nothing in the front of my house. Hours of operation as far as it going 5 hours at a time, that has never been taking place. For the most part, we ride 20-minute sessions if we're lucky, if we're physically able to ride that long. Anyone who's ever rode dirt bikes and ATVs knows it's very taxing on the body. So for the most part, we ride 20-30 minutes at a time, and then we take a 20-30 minute break. And we probably do that maybe 3 times, and as Steve said, maybe 3 times a week at most. Myself, and I know other people also have, you know, exhaust systems that are fully compliant with decibel levels. You know, I believe it's more than just state code, but, you know, DEP, I guess, governs everything, just recreational nationwide. Everything that we own conforms to all of that. You know, we do not have multiple people, especially from out of town, coming and riding around for hours and hours at a time. And as already stated, it is far from a trek. It is a loop through the woods on private property where we can go and legally ride the vehicles we possess and hopefully not bothered by police officers for doing anything illegal. And I don't think that it's fair to have that right taken away from us. It is a reason why I purchased a house with close to 5 acres in a rural home, so I can do my hobbies and things like this. So, most important thing for me is you know, to get the facts out. I think that the information that's being presented to this room is mostly BS, and I think for everyone to make an educated decision on what's going to happen, I think everyone needs to be informed correctly. So it's more or less what I have to say.
Question, do you ever ride at night?
I never ride at night.
Or anybody among your group?
No one has ever rode at night. I own a dirt bike. It doesn't even have a light. I couldn't ride it at night unless I wanted to directly hit a tree and hurt myself.
I will say the original meeting that I had with Mr. Bissonnette, some other residents, did, they did state at that point that they did not ride at night. They did not allude to the fact that there was riding going on, and what we would, other ordinances would be considered quiet hours. All right, anyone else? Yes.
My name's Rob Dutton. I've lived in Willington for 28 years. I do not live on Cosgrove, but I ride with Steve probably every time he rides. He calls me and says, let's go ride and whatever. I just built a house on Fermier Road. Started about 2 years ago. But yeah, I wanted to touch a little bit on the facts, I guess, too, the decibel readings and all that with the sound. So I don't know what either of their machines do, but I just want to say, because I read the minutes of the last town meeting, and there's a lot about modified exhaust systems, and I will say my exhaust system is modified. It's got what's called an FMF Power Core 2 muffler on it, and it actually made the decibel, and you can look this up on their website, made the decibel readings go from 94 decibels, which was stock, down to 92. So it might be modified, but mine actually did get quieter with that. So that was one of the facts I just wanted to bring up with my quad, dirt bike. I also wanted to say how we don't ever ride super long. We don't do anything, I think, over the top as far as time and everything. We don't ride at night like we were talked about also. I want to say, the other thing too is nobody has ever come to us and asked to work something out or said they had a problem. I guess we knew somebody had a problem, but nobody's ever tried to work something out with us. And I think all of us would probably be willing if a neighbor respectfully came to us and said, hey, I don't like how you're riding, can we maybe cut it down to this or not ride on this day? I think all of us would probably be more than willing to work with somebody, but I don't think any of us want to lose the right to ride dirt bikes, ATVs, UTVs, anything like that in Willington. So, but that's about all I got to say. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Yes.
Scott Smith on 24 Cosgrove. So I've lived on Cosgrove for 10 years now, and there's a kid a couple years younger than me that had a motocross bike that lived, I think, 2 or 3 houses up from him, and religiously once a week he would go ripping up the road and back down the other end of it, put the bike away, and that was it. I have ATVs, both my neighbors on either side have ATVs, my neighbor across the street has ATVs. People drive ATVs down the road occasionally going from various parts of town to town, and I've never ever heard of a problem with any of them in the past. There's never been police or anything, blah, blah, blah like that. So to me, it just sounds more like a personal thing between neighbors fighting with each other than something that should be brought up here for the whole town to be affected by one person who has a problem with one of their neighbors. It doesn't feel like it should even be talked about to the point of the amount of riding that they do. There are, to another point, 2 houses down from them is a state trooper. So if they were obviously doing something that was excessive and unsafe for children, I'm pretty sure he would have gone to them, hey, guys, you gotta knock this off. I mean, you can see his house from their house. So to me, it just sounds like a personal thing, and it could, like they said, be handled like gentlemen between each other, instead of involving the town and, you know, making it, you know, if I want to go work on my, you know, shed or something at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, I'll have some of the cops in my house come swinging a hammer. Like, I really don't think that would be a good thing.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
I'm York Graff. I live in Cosgrove Road, 35 Cosgrove Road. And first of all, it's really challenging for me to have a discussion like this because this is a very friendly town and I like all of you guys as neighbors. I moved here many years ago. We lived on Cosgrove for 10 years. We're taxpayers. I'm a registered voter. And it's a quiet town that I moved to. I like Willington, has friendly people, and I think that, yes, there were people in the past who rode ATVs, and nobody complained. And I think something has changed where the noise level has gotten to be much louder. And a couple of weeks ago, I come home from work, and it's loud, it's noisy. I can't really spend time outside and have peace. My wife sits on her computer in our living room, the windows are closed, we hear a noise. It's louder than my neighbor's lawnmowers, and I think it's even louder than Todd's chainsaw. And that's surprising if it's 99 or 94 decibels, because the chainsaw should be louder than that, right? And so it's really bothersome. And you know, there's a good reason for fences. Fences are supposed to make good neighbors, because I can keep my things out and I keep other things out. And that makes good neighbors. But noise does not stop at boundaries, does not stop at fences. It goes across. And it is really noisy. And so I think a noise ordinance doesn't target an individual, but it's really something to make us, you know, happy Willington residents together without having to get into arguments in the public like that. And, you know, other towns have it. Tolland, Mansfield have a noise ordinance. And so I wanted to read what Tolland says. Excessive noise must be controlled by the town to protect, preserve, and promote the public health, safety, and welfare. The town council recognizes the fact that people have a right to and should be ensured an environment free of excessive sound and vibration. I think I deserve that too. I think you deserve to do what you enjoy as well. But like a residential limit of noise is 55 decibels. So I don't know how to reconcile that, but it's really interfering with my ability to come home and enjoy my house.
Anyone else? Yes.
My name is Todd Bissonette. I live at 41 Cosgrove Road. I am here to speak on behalf of myself and 10 other residents, neighbors, property owners, family that have signed a petition. And I'd like to present that to the town at this point. I was also hoped that the town would afford me a little more than 3 minutes to dispute what has been told, what has been said. We're talking here with a couple of quiet riders that like to hang together. They all know each other, they ride together, they're sticking together. The level of track that has been displayed is not a little loop. I've been told testimony here by my neighbor, he stays up in the back. I have video of him coming down around and around at the end of the driveway, hauling back up the hill, opening it full bore to where it's coming to my house, where my window, I've got 110 dB. A chainsaw is 110 dB, not 92, not 94, not 95. If somebody wants to ride, have fun. Don't do it at your neighbor's expense. As York said, it's mandated and set up by Mansfield, that's 55 dB. We have a gentleman here saying out of stock, it's 95 dB out of his car. He toned it down to 92. That's still loud. But if I could set up on this table, I have some paperwork I want to hand forward, is that okay? Or do you want me to do it from my chair?
Paperwork that you want to?
I have, that I can go through as I'm handing it in and talking.
Sure. You also said you had a petition?
Yes, I
Is
do.
that something that went through the town clerk's office?
No, I haven't, it's just, I'm here to
So it's
represent,
just
11 of the neighbors.
So just for the sake of
Yes.
meeting, it's informational sake, an actual petition would have to, a legal petition would have to go through the town clerk's office.
Yeah,
in
it's not,
order
it's
for-
not it's not legal yet, it's just, we're,
I'm just sharing that with you that is.
okay.
You can do that from your seat, that's fine.
It's 10 neighbors stepping forward saying they've had enough.
So again, we didn't set the 3-minute limit for everyone, I'll just let you know that we're closing towards that, so
Okay.
that everyone has a fair chance to speak here.
And I'm gonna talk
So I can
fast.
have my 3 minutes. Mark Drobny, 56
Okay, so
Cosgrove Road.
let Mr. Bissonnette finish his
There we
discussion,
go.
so.
Okay. My name is Todd Bissonnette. I live at 41 Cosgrove Road. I'm here to speak about the AT tract that is located between 42 and 50 Cosgrove Road, which is creating excessive noise, pollution, and nuisance within a residential neighborhood. A residential neighborhood that consists of families, babies, children, and elderly persons up to 90 years old. To the board, I'd like to present a petition that has been signed by 10 neighbors and myself, resident property owners, that are not in favor of what is going on, and they've asked me to speak on their behalf. These 11 property owners and their families' quality of life has been negatively affected by the ATVs that are operating with exhaust systems or loud modified systems on 42 and 50 Cosgrove Road. For the record, I'd like to read the petition. Whereas the residents of Cosgrove Road in Wellington deserve the right to live free from, but not limited to, excessive noise and nuisance which may endanger the inhabitants' health, welfare, safety, morals, possible inconveniences, and or negatively affects property values and one's quality of life. Whereas the AT riding and the construction of AT tracks located at 42 and 50 Cosgrove Road is in an area of a residential neighborhood, and such activity is not suitable or consistent with the character of the neighborhood or the town of Wellington. We seek that the town enforce an ordinance, a cease and desist order to halt the ATV activity on Cosgrove Road, and adopt an excessive noise pollution and nuisance ordinance to preserve and protect the quality of life for all residents of Wellington. We, the undersigned, also petition the town of Wellington, Connecticut to adopt an excessive noise and nuisance pollution ordinance that will Wellington to remain the quiet corner for all residents. The residents of Cosgrove Road are seeking help from the elected leaders of Wellington to address this growing problem while asking the leaders of the town to implement and enforce guidelines that are not consistent and suggested within, but not limited to, number 1, Connecticut State Department of Environmental Protection, all-terrain vehicle policies and procedures. Number 2, Section 48A of the Environmental Protection Act of 1970, where it states that it is an offense to make unreasonable noise any time of the day. 110 dB all day long is unreasonable coming from a recreational vehicle. Character of a neighborhood, as has been said, it's talked about chainsaws.
So what do you mean about all day
Okay.
long?
All right, so at this point, is there anyone else present to speak?
I would like
I want to give everyone an opportunity to have
I got a
their
job,
say.
man.
Okay,
I work, pay
Yeah.
taxes to
My
live
name's
here.
Sarah, I live in Wellington
Your last name,
also.
Sarah?
Smith.
okay.
And I would just like to say that, as it was referenced in the last minutes of the town hall meeting, there is a question of it's affecting people's livelihoods, which, unless they're doing a job from their home that intermittent noise would affect, is literally, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I would just like everyone that's bothered by the noise to question, at what point do we stop mowing our lawns or using a chainsaw? We all live in this country town and have property that we would like to tend to. And I know that Mr. Bissonnette owns tractors and chainsaws. And as everyone has said so far, it's about the same decibels as an ATV. So what is the actual difference? If it is in fact proven that they're riding at 20-minute intervals occasionally.
Yeah. Anyone else who hasn't had an opportunity to speak?
Are you telling me I have my 3 minutes, we're done?
You had over
we're
5
good.
minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. This ordinance is,
Yeah, just state your name for the record.
oh, Martin Drobny, 56 Cosgrove Road. What we're proposing is just
recreational noise ordinance, specific, where it's unnecessary to conduct your activities of maintaining your home. That's specifically how Tolland and Mansfield, that's how their ordinances are written out. In fact, when these recreational activities go on, we are actually required to a certain degree by our neighbors to participate in their recreational activities. We actually have 3 options within the realm of participation. We can participate and learn to enjoy it. We can tolerate it, or we have the option we can move. And it's specifically recreation. That's exactly how Tolland is written and Mansfield. It's not to any other activities. I mean, it's acceptable. This is what we consider, they have considered by the term unnecessary, because there's certain necessary noise that to do a certain activity it's going to just happen. It'll be necessary noise.
And you want to say something?
My name is Michael Johansson. I live at 326 River Road, and for anybody who doesn't know, that is literally right behind Phelps Plaza, which I call the Willington Dragway. So this whole idea of a noise ordinance in Willington kind of makes me laugh, because if anybody's familiar with the little cut through coming up from Phelps, there's a stop sign there. And people like to use that as the drag strip up towards Hilltop and towards Mansfield. And springtime and summertime now we have all the recreational motorcycle riders who like to come buzzing down 32, wide open, and that's a recreational thing. They're waiting for the nicer weather to do it. They don't do it in the wintertime. So I don't see how you can really distinguish between ATVs, quads, dirt bikes, and then motorcycles, guys with hot rods. You know, the decibel level on those motorcycles that I can hear going up 74 at night, when I'm with my wife and my dogs, going down 32, that's at night too. So I don't see how you could direct this towards the riders who have parameters too, where they actually can ride. If they can't ride at night, they can't ride in the wintertime, really. I don't see how you could actually make a fair complaint against them and not broaden the horizon to more people.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm Maureen Lee, and I also reside at 41 Cosgrove, and I'd just like to mention, it's not about not having your ride. Todd has a Harley, and we have neighborhood courtesy when we leave out the yard. We don't rev the engine. We don't ride it hard coming out the yard. We don't ride it hard coming in the yard. I mean, the company that comes over to basically, not so much of the 42, the company that comes over there, in addition to their rides, they ride snowmobiles, they ride dirt bikes, they ride 4-wheels, they ride all year round. Not every day, all day, but they ride all year round. So they have a gamut of what they ride. And there's days that they put ATVs out there, dirt bikes out there at the same time. And you're having them zip around and you're hearing the noise, and it's more than excessive. You know, basically, we look at things like excessive noise of the neighborhood for a lawnmower or a chainsaw. Those are noises of the neighborhood. A noise of a neighborhood, a recreation vehicle, is not a standard noise of a neighborhood. It's just not. So with Willington priding itself as being a quiet corner, I personally have medical reasons. I've had jaw reconstruction, so the penetration when it goes to the windows, sometimes I can feel that. I can get headaches from that, nauseated from that. I don't know if that particularly is causing it. I know it actually has heightened. I know my migraines have heightened. You can actually hear the thunder of the ride when it goes up the hill constantly. Todd has videos, and this is from our bedroom window. We can't open our windows, so we're left to use an air conditioner, central air. Yes, we have it, but we don't always want to use that. We want the air, we want the nature, we want the habitants, we want to hear the birds chirping, we want to hear that. Once those bikes and things start, all the birds fly away. So we just want the neighborhood to be back to what Willington is professed to be. I mean, I moved out here from East Hartford to a quiet area so it could be more reclusive, but we're not finding it to be quiet on a daily basis. And it's not every day, but when it happens, it can be excessive. Thank
Is
you.
there anyone else who has not had an opportunity to speak, that wants to speak on this topic? Okay, so at that point, I think it's our turn to speak. Good. Who would like to begin?
I have a couple of general thoughts. We are not a court of law here. We are not here to prove who's right and who's wrong in this conversation. The only thing that we can consider as the Board of Selectmen is if the town would like us to consider the option of a noise ordinance. Period, the end of the conversation for the most part. I'm not a police officer. I have no jurisdiction to do anything. I can't create a cease and desist order. I can hear what you're saying. I can hear the multiple perspectives. And we can have conversations within this room and then at further opportunities to determine whether or not a noise ordinance in general is something that the town of Willington would like to pursue. As to this particular neighborhood debate, there's not anything that we can answer for either side of the question. We can't say it's okay and we can't say it's not okay. We can say we will consider what our next steps will be. So the arguing is unfortunate. And I wish that there, I have children, I wish there was a way that I could help everybody come to the table and work out an agreement. That's not in our purview here at this table. So I'm hearing both sides. I'm hearing very valid points on both sides.
I have a question. I've had 12 police officers over in the past 2 years. Everyone has told me it's disorderly conduct and breach of peace, and that they would issue a ticket or a summons in the event that there was a noise and nuisance ordinance. They say it's against the law for this to be going on. It's against DEP statutes.
I'm gonna respectfully disagree, because if it were against the law, it would be within their purview to take action.
Okay.
So it's not against anything that's in place. It would be up to the town to put in a town-wide ordinance that would make some of the concerns that you have then illegal. And then they would have recourse. But they do not have recourse, which is what they told this board last summer, correct, John? They did not have recourse in the issues they had, and so they couldn't do anything. So to say that what they were doing is illegal, I think is a little bit of an overreach.
But as I understood, what they told us last summer was that if people were disturbing the peace, they could issue a summons because they are the police force. Now, I'm not sure what kind of an ordinance we could write, which they could then enforce that they can't already enforce according to state laws.
Trooper Stackpole is the officer that came here that gave all of the paperwork to you guys or to the old administration of chapter 34, I think it was 134, 135 of Mansfield, where it states what's going on is against the law.
That's Mansfield, that's an ordinance in Mansfield. We do not have that
DEP
ordinance.
has also instituted and mandated
Private
that it's
property.
against the law. And the DEP has also mandated and showed the provisions, what should be going on private property. I have all that information that you people do not want to hear tonight.
Okay, first of all, us people are listening to you, so I'd like you to hear us at the same time. We took the time to hear all of you, now hear what we're saying.
May I finish my question, please?
In the Trooper Stackpole report, we have minutes from that meeting, which all the selectmen have been privy to. There's nothing in here that says they are breaking any laws from DEP. They are actually saying that there is nothing in place that they can then be fined, arrested, charged with. If the town had an ordinance, then there are things that could go in place. What Mansfield has is Mansfield's ordinance. They cannot enact Mansfield's ordinance within Willington. If we do not have an ordinance, correct me if I'm wrong, our town clerk and my other selectmen, then we follow state statute.
Correct.
So if a police officer was called, as I understand they have been in many instances, they have shown up on the property of these gentlemen who've spoken here, and have you ever been issued?
I've been told I'm doing absolutely nothing wrong. They've never even told us we were doing.
Nothing wrong according to the law,
Yes.
not according to how our neighbors feel.
Correct.
Okay, and I got that
Like
same
3 of them.
sense from the reports from the trooper, is that there was nothing further they could do without an ordinance.
I just have a question.
Sure.
Is that, do you have documents or?
Do I have documents?
Yes. did they-
From all the visits they had?
No. The position that the officer's presenting.
It was in minutes from a meeting July 17, 2017.
Correct. What I believe you just said, that you have what he said in the minutes.
Correct.
But did he have, now he made a claim. He has the obligation to support that claim. Now, did he support the claim with documentation?
That I was not at that meeting, but,
What is
well,
that?
he
That's-
didn't,
you
I
know-
don't know what was provided in hand, I know the minutes of the meeting. I also can tell you that at no time when, and you've called the police on numerous occasions, is that correct?
Trooper Stackpole did provide documentation
Okay.
at that meeting. He provided and showed,
It was a Mansfield ordinance.
Correct.
For the
Right,
town
which
of
is,
Mansfield.
which is, which
Or
is
as an
refer,
example,
which is
yes.
referenced in the minutes. It is
Right.
all in writing here, the Mansfield
My
ordinance.
question-
But we cannot enact a Mansfield ordinance in Wellington, and neither can the
I'm with
trooper,
you on that.
unfortunately.
We're with you on that. Well,
and
my
that-
question
what
was.
we're trying to say is that is totally correct, and I agree with you. I agree with these people, they can ride a quad. The DEP mandates at the boundary, it can't be any more than 67 dB. They're already saying they're running 92. And the Department of Environmental Protection says it's the duty of the state and the the municipalities to enforce the policies of the general statutes. And that's what's being asked, is for this board to make a decision that you're saying, yes, we are mandated to follow the Connecticut general statutes. Well, they're saying what's going on is illegal.
That's not.
No.
I have not
That
heard from the
decimal
DEP.
number's
I
not-
have not heard from the DEP, have you?
I have not heard from the DEP.
Well,
And nor when this came to the board
I have
in
more
the
than
past.
willing to do a DEP
Because the
test.
police would be in
I guarantee that there's no
I would-
harmful decibel reading that will come from that window.
I can tell you we've done no decibel readings, nor do I believe the
guarantee
town has the
In order to
equipment.
register that kind of reading
right.
at 500 feet,
Well,
my
we don't have the
unit is louder
equipment to
than
do
a
so.
jet engine.
So, two things, this board is challenged with, do
well,
we,
that's a claim.
do we push forward
It's true. Open
the
field.
need for an ordinance on the entire town? What I'm hearing at this point seems to be a neighbor dispute on Cosgrove Road. I'm a little disappointed to hear that at no time have we discussed this. That's what I'm hearing, somewhere there's his side, and somewhere in the middle is the truth.
Him and I
So-
talked twice.
So,
He came over and intentionally harassed me.
okay,
That's
so
my
stop,
first time meeting this
I'm
guy.
speaking now, give you all the opportunity to speak. So I'm a little disappointed to hear that as neighbors and residents, we weren't able to work this out in some way, shape, or form. I too live in Wellington, I like it here because it's quiet, I don't expect it to be silent. That is, in my opinion, ridiculous to think that it could be, and I'm not saying anyone here is expecting it to be silent. I have to listen to things that I don't often like while I'm outside enjoying what I want to be my time. I have in the past had an issue with a neighbor and excessive noise from not ATVs but different vehicles. We spoke to them, we worked it out, we have not had an issue since then. So I'm first disappointed that it's to the point where it's a now town issue when it sounds like it's a neighbor issue. And for us to say that we think it's important to develop an ordinance to move forward to ultimately town meeting, where everyone in Wellington would get a vote. Just be clear, the
Right.
three of us can
We don't
propose
decide
an
this.
ordinance, we can get it to town meeting, and then it's in the hands of every Wellington resident, not the three selectmen. So, must everyone be clear that this meeting is not going to put an ordinance into place, you get a vote. If you're if you have the right to vote in Wellington. So with that, we don't get to say on Cosgrove Road, we need to stop all activity. That's not what we can do. We have to look at the entire town. And if the neighbor issue that's happening between a couple of neighbors on Cosgrove Road should now affect the entire town of Wellington, whether or not we should enact an ordinance that would put in place more than just saying you can't ride. There needs to be many regulations on that, there also, and if there are fines involved with that, there also needs to be an appeals process. That involves putting something else into place. Keep in mind, we do not have a resident state trooper or a police force in town to enact these things. So then, that it's just adding another level of responsibility. Not to say whether I'm in favor of one thing or another, these are the things we have to look at when issues come to this board. It's not as simple as, I don't want them riding, I want quiet, I want to ride, I don't care what someone else is thinking. So there are two sides, and we have to think about everything outside of Cosgrove and including Cosgrove Road. So I hear your issue, but unfortunately to me, it sounds like a neighbor dispute. And I'm right now having a difficult time thinking that I would put forward my vote to enact an ordinance on the entire town of Willington for something that has been said here has not been tried to work out individually, and that's disappointing. John, you haven't had a say yet. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
There are some things you have to live with, even in a small town. There are noises that you have to live with. We have different stories here. We have stories that it's loud and running up and down for 5 hours at a time, 3 days a week. And we have stories that it's once or twice a week for a half hour. Maybe the truth is somewhere in between there, I don't know. You've called the police God knows how many times, and the police have never issued any kind of a summons or a citation, which means that they're not in violation of state law, and in spite of what the DEP may say, we do not operate under the DEP. So I don't know who to believe. Again, it becomes...
John, where do you go when the state police come and they say it is disorderly conduct and breach of peace by the unnecessary noise, the volume?
Then you tell them, go arrest those people.
When they sit there and they say that they cannot do anything unless an ordinance is put in place. We had a resident, a
So they're
decorated
telling you
resident state
it's
trooper.
breaking a law.
He's breaking the law, but
Well,
until-
I find it hard to believe he's
What
breaking
law
a
is he
law, but
breaking?
then they can't, he's breaking what you believe to be, should be a law. I don't believe it is a law, or he then could fine,
Well,
arrest,
not
charge.
necessarily.
You can't what law are they breaking if he's saying there's no law in Willington? I don't understand that.
I actually have a different question, and that is, what makes Willington so different from Tolland and Mansfield that they have these ordinances and Willington does not? Because I view this actually, if we would have had an ordinance, we would have had not this disagreement. There would be a guide by our elected officials, by our governance on how to
I want to
live
be
together.
clear, I don't think anybody, so there is not a decision on the table at the moment.
No, but I'm wondering why we don't have it. How come these other towns?
I can't
are-
explain to the history of Wellington politics and why it doesn't
It just
exist
makes
up
us-
until this point. All I can say is, all I can, guys,
Okay, all right.
we're gonna have to ask people to
Discussion is
leave
here,
then.
because at this point, we are still a public, a meeting in public, not a public meeting. We've offered you the opportunity to speak, and now the selectmen are exercising that right. So we could ask none of you to speak at this point, but I think it's important that we interact, but we ask that you be respectful in that.
There is not a decision that anybody at this table can make today. We can have continued conversations about a noise ordinance, and I don't think any of us are saying that that's off the table. We can continue having those conversations. Are we voting on that? Is that something that, like, are we having a conversation today? Or are we voting as to whether or not we're putting anything forward?
Well, there's no vote on the table. If somebody put a motion on, we would have to entertain it,
Okay, so,
one way or the other.
so right now we're hearing, we've heard last meeting, we're hearing this meeting. We've taken a look at a very thick packet of information regarding noise ordinances in other towns. There is nothing in me that says it's not something that could possibly ever happen here in Willington, but we have to have more of a process about whether or not that's gonna happen. And that's a long process, that takes months and months, and that takes a legal process, and then that takes an entire town vote. So nothing is gonna be solved in a time frame that is likely gonna make anybody in this room happy. right? Even if we decided, and even if an ordinance was eventually voted upon, that's still going to be months from now. So in the interim, you all have to live next to each other for a couple of months with whatever it is on the books right now being what it is on the books right now, even if we decided to implement an ordinance. So something is gonna have to happen with you all to live together in this interim or indefinitely while we have a chance to figure this out as a new board of selectmen just coming into terms in November, so
John,
we
I
have
feel
to
like
talk about
You
this.
may have had more to say than you did.
You know, I had started out again that, sometimes we have to put up with noise in the town, there can be a certain amount. I don't hear anything here that convinces me that it's going on every day and, very loud. I don't know how far away they are from your house, maybe 97 decibels where his bike is, but unless his bike is parked right underneath your bedroom window, it's gonna be not quite that loud. One thing I like about Willington, it's a small town, we don't have a lot of laws, we don't try to govern your every motion and every movement. I don't understand how we could have laws that would say, well, you can only not make too much noise in certain ways, only in recreational vehicles. If I wanna cut down a tree for my amusement, well, I can do that, cause unless I'm doing it for my amusement, which I can't. You know, if you have a noise ordinance, you have to have a noise ordinance.
I'm sorry, John, I disagree. It is mandated, written within the ordinances in state law that machinery that maintains one's property is exempt, not recreational vehicles. Somebody's pleasure should not disrupt somebody else's life.
Can I speak to the petition that was presented to us?
Yeah.
Our town clerk is here. So Amy, can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, that's, it's not a,
Can you
it's not a
explain,
valid
right, can you
petition.
explain what would make
So,
something a valid
you would
petition
have
that
to
we
come to
could
my
actually
office.
enact?
Yep,
or act
you
on?
come to my office, we have paperwork, it has to be a yes or no question. Something rather simple, not some long drawn out question. Then you have to get 25 signatures. They have to be, registered voter or own at least $1,000 worth of property in town. Then you can come bring that to me.
Ain't no problem.
What does that do? I mean.
Well, so you're basically asking something to move forward. This is a petition where you're asking the town to enforce a cease and desist order to halt activity on Cosgrove Road. We do not have the ability to do that, for one. The second is, it is discrimination. It's not a legal petition. And I believe when I met with you, I explained to you how to go about getting a petition that held any sort of weight in the town, and that was to go through the town clerk's office. So I just want everyone to know,
You can't do anything with that. It's
right,
not
for this,
going through
unfortunately, it's just information for the sake of this meeting. And so I just want everyone to know that there is a process, no matter what kind of petition on what subject, not just this one, but anything, it has to go through the town clerk's office. And if you ever have questions, you can contact them and they will help you with that. So the petition that you've given us, while it seems to help your side and what it is you're trying to achieve, don't think that we're not acting on it because we don't want to. It's just information. It's just another piece of paper to go in the large file of, stuff we look over to determine where we move forward with this. So it holds no legal weight whatsoever. But I don't want you to think that we're not acting on it because we don't think it important. There's just a process, and that process wasn't met through the town clerk's office. So.
Amy, if I may, just to make sure we have this, so that everybody understands exactly what's going on. There's two ways of getting a town meeting going. Number one would be for us up here to vote to request a town meeting to pass an ordinance. Number two is what the first selectman's talking about right now, where a citizen gets 25 signatures, is
Yes.
it?
I'm not 100% sure because I'm new to this, so I can look more into it tomorrow.
Okay,
If
but-
need be, but I know it's 25,
But
but
does it not have to be the ordinance that is being requested. They can't just say, here's 25 people, and we want you to stop people from riding that loud bikes. I mean, it has to be an ordinance that would be passed at town meeting.
Yes, correct. It's not gonna be, whatever you write in that paper isn't gonna be the ordinance. It's really, I'm
So
assuming
this would not be,
petition to-
this would not be a legal.
No,
Right.
no, correct.
Besides, even if it had been done through your office, the question itself is not something that is in our purview, so it would never have made it as a question out of your office,
No.
correct?
No.
So just because that might be your best option right now, is to petition for a town meeting. I'm not in favor of it. I don't know about how the other two members are here, but that is the way you can go. But it needs to be a valid ordinance, in other words, in the eyes of the law, before it can be passed. Which to say, for us to do a cease and desist, we don't have the legal authority, therefore, the petition itself would not be valid. But you could work with
Right.
them, right, Amy?
Yeah.
Really, the purpose for this meeting was information,
Right.
so thank you.
Oh, I've lost my train of thought. As Liza said, no final decision is gonna come out of tonight's meeting. We've heard your side, you've listened to where we think we are in this process. And again, I wanna stress that what we could decide is we could come up with a written ordinance that was legal and could go forward. We can't just put anything on paper and move it forward. It has to follow some protocols that would involve the town attorney at some point, which is why it takes months of discussion. And we would then vote to call a town meeting. There is a cost to all of those things. You are all taxpayers. I want you to be aware that every time we do these things, there are costs involved. And at the bottom line, we all help pay for those costs. And it is not the three people you see before you that are going to decide if an ordinance is adopted in this town. It is the residents in Willington, the voters in Willington. So those who can legally vote in town meeting, like Amy, and it's the same as what Amy stated before, you have to be a registered voter or own $1,000 of property. And those are all things that are verified. And your residents, so anyone you believes in what you think should happen, get to say. The same for you and all of your friends. But everyone who's not in this room, who is going to feel one way or another on another ordinance on them and their property in Willington, is going to get a say. And telling someone in this town what they can and can't do with their property is going to fill a room and it's going to open up discussion, which is not a bad thing. But we do not make the final decision. I just want everyone here to be clear. We are not going to say, yes, there's an ordinance. I'm sorry your side didn't win, but that's what we decided. That's not how it works. The process is that we would look and deem that it was necessary for the town to adopt something. We would have to, as a board, agree with a majority, a vote, that the entire town should then be under a particular ordinance, and then the town decides. So, I know I sound like I'm repeating myself, but I just wanted to stress, especially if we just had a discussion about how people don't know why they're coming out and voting, that there is a vote. That's the process. You all get a say. Last week, we had a town meeting that was to spend $135,000 on an item that was necessary and had to happen at one of the schools. There were about 12 people in the room. So, there was also a discussion last year on a fee at the dump, correct, John?
No.
Yeah.
People at it.
That filled the town hall, the old town hall. So depending on people's level of interest, a room is gonna be full or not. So don't be surprised if something like this fills the old town hall and you're gonna hear from all sides outside of Cosgrove Road. Because we would be asking for something for the entire town, not just your town, just your road. I would encourage you at this point, while this board decides where to move forward, that you try to work some of your neighbor issues out amongst yourselves. And I would hope that there could be some resolution, at least in the meantime, while we determine where we're moving forward with.
Erica?
Yes.
Excuse me, I have a question while we're in limbo here. What stance would the town take at the green, the library, school up the street, behind the town hall here? There are numerous events that attract thousands of people every year, over and over, as like, I think it's on 26th, there's the fundraiser coming down Cosgrove Road. In the event of any of these events that take place at these other functions, where once again we're 6,000 people, they're all inside of a residential neighborhood. What if somebody decides to run a quad in circles like I have videos of and disturb thousands of people? What stance would the town take?
Well, if they're on their private property, Todd, we don't, I can't tell them
That's
while
never-
someone's
that's
running,
never happened.
while
There's
someone's
never
running,
such- just for the record.
but while someone's running down the road in a race, I can't tell you, you can't mow your lawn. I have done that road race.
Correct.
I have run that road race and seen people mowing their lawns, going about their day because they
Once
weren't
again,
participating in that.
Machinery to maintain the lawn
That's
is
fine.
acceptable.
Look, I'm telling you what I saw, I'm not gonna tell you I saw an ATV rider when I didn't. But people are going about their day on their property. The town, at this point, doesn't have something in place where we can say, you can't do that while we run a road race. I can't tell you you can on next Tuesday, and I can't tell you that you can during the PTA road race.
So,
Correct.
the house that's for sale next door to your office, if somebody decided to do circles while you're trying to conduct town business, you couldn't shut it down, then you're saying? You're saying that's acceptable?
It's private property.
Exactly.
What we would do is entertain a conversation with the residents that we're having difficulties with. I can't walk over there. I may be the first selectman and I may have an office right next to that, but I can't walk over and tell them they have to stop riding a quad on their property because it's bothering me during the day. I don't have that right.
Isn't that why we have laws and ordinances in place?
There is-
Correct, but right now there is no ordinance, so I can't tell them
We're trying to put one
nothing.
in place.
We're discussing, right, that is, and that is right.
Now you're getting somewhere.
Well,
We're all respectful, it would never, ever happen.
and I'm not gonna say it would never happen because
Right.
some things, look, I had some neighbor issues myself and there are things I never thought would happen, and they did, and so you handle them. Mine were able to be handled together, discussing them. I would encourage you to at least start there while you're asking the town to put in a town-wide ordinance.
Right, but we should be,
For the
we
minority
shouldn't
of
have
11
ordinance
people.
fear
I'm not
necessarily.
saying you have ordinance fear.
No, I'm not, I didn't say I
But-
did have, I definitely don't.
But there are plenty of people on the other side of the argument, and that came out when the
Correct.
question of charging a fee at the dump came out. People, and what I heard from those people wasn't, yes, I think we should pay, no, I don't think we should. It was, I don't want the town telling us one more time what we should and shouldn't do. We had a sexually
Well, it's-
oriented business ordinance come into
Correct.
play, and people saying, whether I agree with the business or not, I don't want the town telling me what can and can't be here. So there are people that don't feel like another ordinance is a good idea. And there are people that feel like another ordinance for what they want is a good idea. So there are two sides to the argument, and our job is to flush out what we think is the best for the town.
Fundamentally though, we all obey things. We may or may not be aware of them, but there are rules. Sure. Whether we're aware of them or not, there's still rules. This is just, this is behavior modification.
But I could
Perhaps.
That's
look,
what
I
the
could take a
ordinance-
line
It
down the
is.
middle of this
Actually, you do
room and say that this side
legislate
believes
We do.
that the behavior is wrong and this side believes that the behavior is
Well,
right. So
that's-
who is the person who decides who's right and who's wrong?
Well,
We do.
We do.
And then the town does.
And then the town gets the final vote. We decide if the town gets a say, unless a petition comes forward that forces a town meeting.
yes.
So,
I mean, the only thing I think I would like to say is that, as was pointed out, people have ridden ATVs around in the past, and it has never reached a level like this. So something has changed that made people come here and talk to you guys. So it's not like an occasional use every now and then got people upset enough.
It was a statement full of
Come.
lies that made me come here and sit here.
That's
Well,
why
it was a
I'm here
statement
too.
full of
When I
lies.
read that,
I-
I wouldn't have come if I
look,
didn't raise that.
It's important that we get along, but there was a change that happened.
That
so
was
what I'll say is that
ridiculous.
your issues individually as neighbors is not gonna be solved by the three of us. Okay,
No,
we now are looking broader than the issues of the residents of Cosgrove Road and your personal neighbor issues. We are not here to solve those, nor can we. Once you brought it to us, we have to look at the bigger picture and determine if we believe this is something that's important to enact on the entire town, on every road. That's what we're charged with. We don't get to decide what happens
Right.
on just your
Within
road.
within a certain perspective, a correctly filled out, followed the rule petition will force a town.
Absolutely.
Right,
But I
so you-
also had told you, I told both of you that when I met with you,
Oh, no,
back in April, I explained to you how the process would go, and that you, no matter what we decided, if it wasn't what you wanted, you have the opportunity, but then a vote would come at that point. So,
That
so I
petition-
just want you to know what this petition,
That was more
the weight it
information to
holds.
show you that there's people, 11 households that are close to what's going on, are concerned with what's going on.
Robin?
Correct.
If they force the
But-
petition for an ordinance to be passed, who drafts the ordinance?
Exactly.
The town, the townspeople, when, well,
Well,
you'd have
I-
to go over somebody would have to come up with one and put it out there. We
Well,
went through
the
this.
town attorney, the last July, when this was brought up, the town attorney did propose an ordinance, and.
He did propose orders, he gave us a draft
Alright,
of
I'm
what
sorry,
one could
draft.
look like
But
if
it
we were
was
to.
stating that it was permissible between the hours, and I don't know what the hours
Right.
were, but
That's
like
a-
10
I can
a.m.
Yes.
to 10 p.m. or something like that. There was something, and
Sure.
so.
So
But
unfortunately,
that's
that,
the thing is
that's
that
what's
you
in
guys are
the.
writing-
Would pertain to a leaf blower, saying you
No,
can't use a
that
leaf
is,
blower.
that is
before
actually, that is
I'm an
incorrect,
elected
because we
official.
were talking about something other than,
Oh.
there were, items in that were exempt. And so that is one of them.
From 7 a.m. to
Right.
like
We-
8 p.m. or some 10 p.m. I don't know what the time frame was, but.
And you very well, that very well may be true. It may be very difficult.
Well, I know
Your
there's towns
side
out
may
there
be
that tell you
difficult.
You can't use your leaf blower when.
That, because that would not be,
That wouldn't fly.
that,
You
well,
would
that
vote for
wouldn't
that.
be in the ordinance, nor was it in the draft
Is that
that had come in.
public doc,
You would have a draft and you could make an amendment.
No, because no draft, this was what the town attorney had given to us if
So
we
it's
were
not
to,
available.
because the board has not actually proposed anything, so there's nothing proposed. It was the town attorney providing us with a draft to start if we decided we were going to, move forward with adopting an ordinance.
They have a charter?
What?
Is that a charter?
They do.
We don't have a charter.
We don't have a
so
charter,
don't
both
have
Charlotte
that.
and Mansfield have a charter,
So
correct?
you can't, it's gotta go
So then you
the
won't.
way it is.
Okay.
Right. So, so there's some things to work out here. I think,
Sounds to me
Okay,
like
we know what
everybody needs to
to
come to my house and talk to me like a man and maybe figure out some hours and options and work like human beings for a little while.
I would encourage each of you to be respectful to the other one in that
Yes.
process. That's the first thing I would do. And
I second
It'd
it.
be amazing what that was like, would be.
and try to leave most of your emotions out of it in order to be able to
Be
get
amazed
anything
what
solved.
that
As a board, moving forward,
No?
where do you see this going?
So,
How would you like to continue with this? Would you like me to contact the town attorney and draft a potential ordinance? Again, there's a cost involved in that. If this board wants us to move forward with something like that.
I'm kind of concerned because, I'm not in favor of that because, well, obviously I'm not in favor of such an ordinance.
Okay.
But, with all due respect to Mr. Bissonnette, he, I assume, will be gathering a petition to force a town meeting. And if so, how do we make sure that the ordinance which he proposes is legal? And I would say he would have to go to you and work with the town clerk.
To make sure the ordinance is legal?
Yeah.
Is that would have.
Your petition would be a yes or no
Yeah, the
question,
petition would
is
be
that
the yes or
correct?
no question, and the ordinance we'd have to talk to the town attorney. to-
Because we wouldn't be proposing an ordinance, so
No.
that's where things get a little muddled.
I have a question.
So I don't wanna see you go through a process without having all the answers to how that would happen,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure.
Well, now I'm a little confused.
But if he forces it, excuse me, if he forces, if a petition is moved forward to force a town meeting, what is the question? Is the question to hold a town meeting to make us draft an ordinance? Or to enact an ordinance that hasn't been proposed?
Yes.
Well, I would think that
They would have to have.
they
one.
would have to have a proposed ordinance. which,
But how do they determine that it,
well, the best thing would be for them to hire a lawyer, but
okay.
that runs into.
Well, that's what I'm saying, as opposed to the town paying for the town attorney to do that, because the board hasn't, if the board hasn't at that point said we're gonna move forward with it.
Now,
It shouldn't,
if the town clerk were to work with him, before he gets the petition up, and maybe she could, talk to the town attorney if necessary, to help him draft the ordinance that he wants.
but then that's the, I mean, that's the town doing that, so well,
Well-
maybe I should reach out to him to see what the actual process would be
Okay,
in forcing a town meeting like that, in the event we got to that point.
okay, because what,
Wouldn't you have to have a town meeting, have a vote to propose an ordinance? That would be saying that
Well,
one person in the town with 25 signatures can write a law about anything, is what you're saying.
well, no,
That
you
can-
have a town meeting where
You have a town
everybody in
meeting.
town.
Well, especially, I mean, for the sake of the town spending taxpayer money on writing this ordinance, you
Correct.
think you'd have to.
so what can
propose
happen is
meeting,
that
have a public
anyone
vote
can,
To even propose an
but
ordinance.
anyone in town, you have the right to,
I can
an-
write up an
a
ordinance
petition that is legal, that goes through the town clerk's
So
office
how
on
would I write
anything
up
you
a
want.
petition opposing noise ordinance and go around door to door and knock on every old time chainsaw guy?
Contact a
Say, hey,
lawyer
you
to
want
make,
somebody to tell
you
you
wanna
you
make
can't
sure
drive
that
your tractor
you're,
around?
that everything about it is
Because I'm
legal.
sure that'll get more signatures in a day than he could get in a week, you know?
But it's not about chainsaws.
Is that possible?
No, it's the whole town, it's a dispute between 3 property owners.
Anyway.
Okay,
And a
okay,
road that
all right,
they-
I'm gonna ask at this point, in the discussion at this meeting is done.
Okay.
So, we,
What I'm trying to say is, in fairness, if I understand, he has to propose an ordinance. He can't just say,
Correct.
should the town control noise, because
Correct.
that's not gonna, but on the other hand, who is going to write this ordinance so it's legal?
exactly, so if he uses the town clerk to go to our town attorney, then the town, I mean, that's town funds.
That's-
Okay, all right, the discussion is at the board level, I'm sorry.
If it-
So-
I'm gonna go. You guys have a good night.
So, in my opinion, it is not up to the town attorney to write an ordinance for a resident who wants something in place that hasn't come from the correct board. I don't believe that's his legal, we'd be paying him to write an ordinance for,
Yeah, I think the
it would
resident
have,
would propose it
and then it would go to them, but we wouldn't be asking the town attorney to write it.
No.
They would have to do that, so,
Okay, then,
yeah.
then we just tell him he has to either write it himself or get an attorney to
Get an
do
attorney.
it.
Who wrote the ordinance for, the last one that was put in for sexually orientated businesses? Was that privately done by Christina, or did the town write that?
She did not write it, I don't
Who
know
wrote
where
it?
it came, I have no idea.
Everything goes through the town attorney though, but that was the town.
So in other words, if one situation, the individual writes it, then the other situation, the town attorney writes it.
Absolutely
That's
not.
discrimination.
Absolutely not. The Board of Selectmen, the Board of Selectmen proposed an ordinance and moved forward to town meeting. So that is on the town to come up with the ordinance. If this board does not propose we move forward with this, it is not our job to write an ordinance that we haven't said we should move forward to town meeting. It is not so this board makes that decision. That is what people have elected us to do. One of the
This whole
many.
meeting was drafted and brought up to, the petition was to show interest by the other neighbors to where they're entitled to their peace and quiet, the same verbiage as the gun range. Where all these people didn't want the gun range in their backyard, now it's acceptable for quads. So we're asking that the people that sign that petition are interested in the leaders of this town to protect their peace
Then
and
I
quiet.
would encourage them to have a legal petition to the town with a question that goes through the town clerk, like I had suggested in the first place. I would also encourage them to speak in front of the town, as you have, as Mr. Drobny has, as these gentlemen have. I encourage all of you, everybody gets a say. So this petition is merely information for us. It's not, it doesn't hold any weight, but I would encourage those residents to come forward, to speak up. It's why when we met the first time, I explained to you the different ways things could go, and specifically regarding a petition, that bringing forth a petition that asks us to cease, enact a cease and desist order on something that we don't have the authority to do is unfortunate. I'm not sure what the people who signed this thought that they were gonna have done. Did they think that you were gonna bring this to a meeting and we were gonna say all quad riding on, but that's what your petition says. What, I'm sorry, your petition says we seek that our town enforce a cease and desist order to halt the ATV activity on Cosgrove Road. We don't have that authority.
Well, thank
But-
you very much.
But you then had
For
20, these
answering
people,
my question.
you had these people sign this is what I believe they were signing, attesting. They wanted us to do
Partially-
something.
partially
We didn't have,
Partially it's done incorrect, just like the information that's been sent to you where these gentlemen are saying you're 500 feet from my house. It's the property line. It's 180 feet to my bedroom, not 500. It's a multi-level layered track. It's a group of guys that like to ride together that are here defending each other.
And
I've never once
so
ridden
we
with
moved
them.
from
By the way,
productive,
never once.
I'm sorry,
Never once.
again, I'll remind you that you're at a public meeting, not a meeting in public. We've given you the opportunity to speak, and now I'm moving this discussion on to the next item on the agenda, which is old business, awarding, there was no action set to be taken.
Correct.
So, and there's no motion to do so, awarding the propane contract. So the last meeting, we had 2 bids. Robin and I did some research. We cannot find a time where someone has had to come out, where that labor rate would come into play. And then with some of our math, the trip charge is, and has been on every time they come out and deliver. So if you take that, for instance, and if it's a $120 delivery, the math would be to add 13 cents a gallon to their bottom line price. If it's a $220 gallon delivery, it would add 7 cents to their cost, which would bring them to about even. So with that information, I would move it to award the propane bid to High Grade Gas.
I'll second.
Any discussion? They were the cheaper of the 2. No other discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Good and welfare, I have a couple of things. So the first is, as of today, I received notice that Sherry McGann, who is our current Eastern Highlands Health District sanitarian, will be replaced by Holly Hood as of June 4th, 2018. So publicly want to thank Sherry for her work in Willington. And then after that, it will be Holly. Holly will be reaching out to Susan's Department of Planning, Zoning, Building Department to set up when her office hours and things will be. We received a resignation on May 15th from Kate Standish, who is resigning as of June 15th from the Library Board of Directors. She's moving out of town and will no longer be able to serve on that board. So we want to thank Kate for her years of participation in not only that board, she served on the Youth Advisory Board, I believe. So wish her well in her future endeavors. She and her family are moving, but they've served the town well up to that point. The Memorial Day Parade is, God bless you, is Monday, May 28th on the town green. So we ask everybody to be in place by 8:15. We'll start at 8:30. If you know any secret no rain dances, I encourage you to try those. Senator Courtney, Congressman Courtney is our speaker. And so we want him to be able to come out. We want us to be able to march down to the cemetery. If it rains, we will hold a service in the Old Town Hall. So something will happen one way or the other. So we still hope that kids and the Boy Scouts will come out and honor those men and women who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country. So again, the parade, if weather permits, there will be a parade that will step off from the town green, down 74 to the Willington Hill Cemetery, a small ceremony, and then back up. So put on your walking shoes, After the parade goes through, any resident that's there is encouraged to join in and walk down for the parade. That's all you had here, Robin? Oh, Willington Days. Willington Day is Saturday. This Saturday, or right now the weather is nice, there is a PTA fun run. It will be held still here at Center School. Willington Day will begin at 11, ending at 3 p.m. at River Road. So you can still do both events. I still encourage people to do, participate in both events. River Road is a new,
The athletic complex.
the athletic complex, not just River Road in general. But if you see a big party and they're willing to have you, that's up to you. So I encourage you to come down. There are lots of groups. Sign up. They're selling things, sharing information. It's a great activity that's just all about Willington. So the Republicans will have a booth there. The Democrats will have a booth there. The Girl Scouts will have a booth there. The Boy Scouts will be manning the fishing derby that will still be at Thompson's Pond, and that begins at 4 p.m. Robin? 4:30. All right. So there'll be all kinds of things you can sign up for at the Willington Day booth. There'll be a dunk tank. Sadly, as many of you would like to dunk me in a dunk tank, I've been asked, I had offered, but that will not happen this year. I will stand next to it. I've not been, medically I cannot, sadly. I had some things happen that make me not be able to go in a dunk tank, but if either of you would like to take my place,
John, I think you should.
feel free to step up.
All the water sloshes
I
out
was
when I
actually
go in.
looking
and
forward
it's-
to it, so I'm a little bit disappointed, but my son is off. My son is offered to take my place, but I don't think that would be as much fun, so he thinks it will. With that, either of you have anything you'd like to share as far as good and willful? Oh, it is National Public Works Week. So tonight, there's a Public Works truck out front. We're accepting goods for the Willington Food Pantry that is in need of items. We think about that at the holiday time. Right now, those cupboards are pretty bare. So while recognizing our Public Works Department, who works really hard for us all year long, we're also using them for good to fill up that truck. It's gonna be in different places around Willington. At the library, Wednesday it'll be at the transfer station, so when you take some garbage, put some good food in the truck. It'll also be at Willington Day, so fill it up. Half of the back seat was full from today. It's been here all day, so anyone who can donate, thank you in advance.
And what road is he paving again?
He's paving Tinkerville Road, if weather permits, on Wednesday. If it ever stops raining. All right, with that, if you have nothing else, I move to adjourn at 7:57.
Second.